Hello everyone, how's it going? The Quarry has young counselors attempting to survive a horrific nightmare after one guy decided he wanted to sabotage their way home to try and rekindle a dead relationship. Today we are talking about Supermassive's latest game, the ending, and why it's important to make logical choices in life and death situations. We start off with a couple, Laura and Max, heading to Hackett Quarry summer camp one day early before their jobs as counselors start. The area is an internet dead zone, Max is lost, and we later learn he did nothing to prepare for his upcoming job. Seeing someone on the road, Max avoids the thing and drives into the forest as a spectral woman is seen sitting in the background, placing Max in some kind of trance as he nearly avoids a tree trunk. Thankfully, they aren't hurt, but the car is damaged. Heading outside to find Max's tools, Laura can learn that Max was rejected from college and he hasn't told her yet, but she chooses not to say anything. With tools in hand, Laura looks around as Max fixes the engine to hear and see a woman in the forest. Deciding this deserves her attention, she decides to head deeper into the forest, finding a bunch of stuff including a flyer for a show called Harem Scarum with a fortune teller advertised. We also see a burnt cage advertising someone named Silas the Wolf Dog Boy. Eventually, Laura is scared off by the same specter and runs back to Max, who hears the same woman, and they are both equally freaked out, hiding in the car. Inside the car, a cop shows up and asks what they are doing. You can provide either evasive or direct answers, but the cop seemingly has blood on his neck. Regardless, he helps the couple out of the forest and tells them to head to the Harbinger motel. When asked why they simply cannot go directly to the camp, the cop continues to be evasive, even telling them aggressively to go to the motel. Despite this, Laura and Max decide to head to the camp, learning of its location based on where the cop was about to point when shown where the Harbinger motel is located. When at the camp, they find out that the boss, Mr. Hackett, isn't in there. Max is annoyed, but Laura insists she called ahead, but she was only able to reach his voicemail. This annoys Max further, and he waits in the car as Laura searches the property after seeing a car parked in the lot. Heading to the back, Laura peers into some doors leading into the basement with someone inside. She calls out but can't get inside due to a lock, believing that the person is injured inside, calling out for Max and using his tools to break the lock open. Inside, they smell something rotten and find a bloody collar with Ian written on it and an animal body not too far. Laura decides she wants to leave as Max starts to babble. Just then, something leaps out of the shadows and bites him. Here, Laura can decide to leave Max or try to pull him to safety. Regardless of your choice, Max is pulled back into the basement, and Laura is drugged by the same cop who shoots whatever attacked them before yelling to the couple for not going to the Harbinger motel. We are now introduced to the fortune teller. Similar to the curator in the Dark Pictures anthology, she'll give us hints of future events if you find tarot cards hidden in each chapter, but her reasons for helping us aren't all altruistic, as we'll later find out. We now dart a couple of months ahead to see the summer is over. The kids are leaving the summer camp, and the counselors are preparing to leave as well. Jacob is the first character we take control of, and he's going through a breakup with his summer girlfriend Emma that his childhood friend Caitlin is mocking him about. Now having to grab the last of the bags, we learn that hunting season has been cancelled due to the low deer population, and we meet Ryan as well, another counselor who manages the boats that is more interested in his podcast than to talking to Jacob. Heading into the lounge, we see that the next two counselors are Dylan and Nick, who playfully lock Jacob out and learn that the Hackett summer camp has been in operation for over 70 years, which will be important later. Getting inside through an unlocked window, Nick plays it off as Dylan's fault and that it was funny, and Dylan just doesn't really care. With the bags in hand, Jacob speaks more to Caitlin about his breakup, where Jacob can equally mark Caitlin for not taking her chance with Ryan or becoming defensive about it. Jacob then heads to the engine and he asks Caitlin how to sabotage the car, which she explains to either cut the fuel line or to steal the rotor blade playfully because she believes that he wouldn't do it. This is exactly what Jacob does, all for the chance to spend one last night with Emma to try and recover their relationship. Everyone meets in the lot, and we find out that technology was not allowed within the camp and possible relationships between all the counselors. It seems everyone had a crush on everyone here. Jacob is mocked for his relationship ending, with Emma but being the only one who had his chance at a relationship, seeing that no one took their shot. We then meet the next two major characters, Emma and Abby. Abby is a talented artist but cautious, and Emma is a charismatic social media enthusiast who likes to live in the moment and cause drama equally. The two find out their bags are locked in a cabin and can choose to break in or leave them. Either way, heading through the camp, we see a carving on the tree that says Jacob and Emma forever, but Emma crossed out forever with summer, showing Emma has moved on, but most importantly, Abby finds a vial with a strange smelling substance inside, but decides to put it back. When heading back, Emma wants to take the scenic route, whereas Abby wants to head directly to the parking lot. Taking the direct route could result in the death of a poor squirrel, but heading down the other path reveals smoke coming from the island that's in the middle of the camp. The two decide to ignore it and head back to the lot, where Jacob tries to be an aggressive gentleman to Emma, while we see that Abby and Nick like each other but are awkward acted on those feelings, and that Dylan likes Ryan. Ryan reveals that he likes a podcast talking about supernatural things as well, this one being about their camp called the Hag of Hackett's Quarry, a woman who died in a fire in the area along with her son, and now she haunts the woods. Chris Hackett then appears to address the kids as they prepare to leave, with Ryan joining him in his office to get his keys to the van, with everyone's phones as well. Ryan is forced to leave as Chris takes a private phone call, and if you listen in, Chris is nervous about something that is about to happen, but finds Ryan is listening in and disappointed in him, or Ryan can respect Chris's privacy and just listen to his podcast. Chris is a wreck, trying to find his keys as Ryan discusses a personal matter about leaving home to study animation. Ryan and Chris clearly have a close relationship and values his input, with Ryan even meeting Chris's kids. We learn that Caleb works at the scrapyard and Kaylee is a teenager who doesn't know what she wants to do with her life. Chris even tells him that Ryan is his favorite counselor, but advises him to stop with the horror stories as it's bad for business, and we'll later learn they indeed freak the kids out. Either way, this business is important to the Hackett family, as we'll later find out why. Regardless, Chris is focused on getting everyone out of the camp, citing it's dangerous to drive at night. When outside, the car breaks down from Jacob's sabotage that Caitlin keeps quiet about, likely not wanting to snitch out her friend, freaking Chris out as he breaks down about staying the night. Out of option, she agrees, but orders Ryan to keep everyone in the lounge for the entire night, but doesn't say why. Of course, everyone decides they want to throw a party despite Ryan's objections, who eventually gives in. We then see two guys, one watching the kids with a rifle and the other slamming a sign down saying hunting season is open, with the old man covering himself in blood and the other guy already covered in dried blood. We now see Jacob and Emma, who are attempting to break into the general store. Emma is filming a short video and can kick down the door or wait for Jacob to pick the lock. The two head deeper into the store as Emma finds a safe, another flyer for Hackram Sacrum, and plans for fixing the lounge's chimney, but Chris doesn't have the money for it. We also see the same hunters watching the kids from a distance. They find the supply closet with beer, but most importantly, hiking bags covered in dried blood and claw marks. Emma also finds a shotgun and a combination to the safe, citing that the shotgun would be necessary just in case they find bears, but in reality they just want to play with the shotgun, which is just stupid, but in reality it will be important, so they lucked out on that. When opening the safe, Emma finds bullets and fireworks, but Jacob finds a discontinued childhood snack, peanut butter pops, but he's very excited about them, even decide risking eating an expired food that would likely give him diarrhea. Dylan and Ryan head to Chris's office to charge their phones and search the area, finding a basement, Chris's counselor's staff book, and his surveillance room. Dylan is creeped out by it, but all the cameras are pointed towards the trails and none are placed within the camp. We also find that Chris has been collecting the mail for Laura and Max, the counselors who didn't show up and believed to have abandoned their positions, which should have been more strange than the surveillance cameras. Dylan then takes his chance to flirt with Ryan, who seems uninterested in Dylan's advances. With their phones charged, they head to the party and take control of Abby and Nick. The two just talk, but avoid saying anything meaningful to one another, with Abby showing off her drawing skills to Nick's amazement. The two are then ambushed by a boar, but escape with a good story as the pig just leaves with its kid. Back at camp, Caitlin notices someone is on the island but dismisses it as nothing, where Dylan reveals Chris's cameras to Caitlin. Caitlin understands he needs a system since he runs a camp full of kids and needs to track them down and be aware if there's any wildlife in the area. Abby, Nick, Jacob, and Emma return with supplies, but Nick is excited to see the butter pops. Wanting some, Jacob challenges Nick to a shooting contest to see who gets them. Caitlin, being the responsible one, decides to supervise the competition. The contest doesn't matter. If you shoot straight as Nick, Jacob will always miss and Caitlin will always win in the end, showcasing her incredible shooting skills and winning the butter pops. As the counselors listen to music at the party and drink, they decide to play Truth and Dare. The first question is launched at Abby, with Dylan asking if she's a virgin. Uncomfortable answer, and Dylan changes the question to if she slept with anyone at camp, and she answers no, kinda confirming that she isn't a virgin and she has slept with someone. Abby is next but takes too long, and Emma decides to choose Ryan. Asking Truth will reveal Ryan asks Chris for some advice, and choosing Dare will have Ryan kiss either Dylan or Caitlin, and I mean, you have to choose London Tipton, it's just a rule. Next is Ryan, who can choose to dare Jacob to leap over the fire, which he doesn't do out of everyone's concern, he may catch on fire, or Truth for Caitlin, who decides that she never hooked up with Jacob, but did practice French kissing on him to Jacob's annoyance. Caitlin is next, who dares Emma to kiss Nick or Jacob, and she chooses to kiss Nick, which annoys Jacob, who storms off along with Abby, who walks into the woods after Emma makes note that Nick's a good kisser. Abby starts talking to herself about how unannoyed she is about the entire situation, but gets lost in the process, with Nick coming to look for her. The two have a heart-to-heart where they can either reveal how they feel and kiss one another, or just dance around the subject like before when they walked in the woods. The two hear something and attempt to leave before getting attacked. Nick is hurt, but someone shoots the creature off Nick. Here Abby can choose to help or run from the situation. Either way, the creature heads towards Abby, but someone shoots it off again. Abby runs and evades the creature, trying to get to camp for help. We see Jacob is heartbroken by Emma kissing Nick, showing he really does care for Emma, and just then Emma tries talking to Jacob about the situation. It's clear that Emma doesn't want a relationship, and it was a summer fling, but Jacob holds on to hope. Emma decides to cheer him up with some late night swimming, where Jacob learns 4 hikers who were killed in the recent months. Well, officially they went missing, but likely they're dead. And learns that Chris has a brother from a local photo. Someone used a boat recently, and we can see that there's someone on the island. Coming back to the lake, Emma tries to cheer Jacob up, and he opens up to her that he wants to be with her. Just then, Jacob hears Abby scream as Emma swims to the island and cannot hear anything. If Jacob grabbed the rotor blade from the car, he'll lose it in the lake, with the player able to dive into the lake and grab it. If you choose to go into the lake, you'll find a bloated body. This is one of the bodies of the hikers that went missing, but he was bound and dropped into the lake mysteriously. Jacob grabs what he needs and then leaves to find Abby. Back at camp, Caitlin reveals she knew Emma would kiss Nick for drama, but it was a ruse to get Abby and Nick to finally admit how they feel before heading out of camp. Abby appears and tells them about Nick, to which Caitlin tells Ryan to go and get Nick, which makes little sense. Caitlin is shown to be the best shot and clearly is in better shape than Ryan, so I'm not sure why she didn't go. We also later find out she does take charge, so it makes little reason to send Ryan, showing that he hasn't demonstrated any skill with a shotgun. Either way, Ryan rushes to find Nick being dragged away by the young hunter that we saw earlier in the overalls. Ryan can choose to shoot him, forcing the hunter to flee and drop a blood vial, or forcing Nick to act and get away. We see that Jacob is searching for Abby, but gets caught in a rope trap. The same hunter finds Jacob and cuts him down, covering Jacob in blood, or Jacob can throw dirt in his eyes and run, but it's best to let him dump the blood onto Jacob as it will keep him alive. Back at camp, Dylan and Ryan have no idea what to do with Nick, as his leg is likely infected from whatever bit him. Dylan wants to cut off his leg, to Ryan's logical response is, "What the hell are you thinking?" And he's like, "I don't know, man. I mean, dude, you're not a doctor. What the hell are you going to do? Like, you have no idea how to cut off a leg, and he'll probably die from the blood loss. It's likely just to wait. Even if it's infected, wait for a hospital." Abby is drawing from memory of what she saw, and they hear something coming towards them. It's Jacob, and here you can shoot and kill him without Ryan ever knowing that he murdered Jacob, which is pretty screwed up. Jacob tells them what happened, but Ryan reminds him that he left Emma back on the island. Jacob decides to head back, but tries to take the gun from Ryan, but Caitlin refuses since Nick is hurt and they need it for protection for whatever is out there. We see that Emma is okay and decide to make a video venting about her problems she's going through and decide to explore more of the island, heading to the treehouse, making notes about her relationship with Jacob of how she likes him but isn't ready to settle down in any way, even in a relationship, wanting to be free to do whatever she wants and go anywhere she wants, but also makes note that she does want to see where he goes, and if they meet up in the future, yeah, maybe they'll end up together. But for now, she just doesn't want a relationship, or she can be incredibly annoyed for him leaving her despite the fact he did have a good reason. Or she can talk about how she hopes Abby's okay, feeling remorse for kissing Nick. When heading into the treehouse, Emma can find a recent fire, the same one we saw when driving with Abby, and stolen police keys. Inside, she finds gear that isn't part of the camp and a trap door. If she opens the door, she'll die from the creature that's up there. But checking the bags, Emma finds clothes and items to defend herself with, such as a taser and mace. Opening the trap door reveals a massive animal who attacks Emma. When she uses the taser or mace to get away, she can use the taser specifically to take a picture of the creature for later. Given chase, Emma avoids the creature and climbs the treehouse, using the trapdoor to lock the creature below. Back at the lounge, the group attempts to treat Nick as Dylan and Ryan head to Chris's office to use the landline to call for help since they're in a dead zone and their cell phones don't work conveniently. We also learned that Caitlin worked as the nurse since Laura never showed up. Ryan, being brilliant, has no idea whether to call an ambulance or the cops. Dylan, equally brilliant, ponders this. Seriously, just call the cops and tell them you're under attack and to send an ambulance along with police officers. Not hard. Just then, the power shuts down and Dylan decides to grab Chris's gun, to Ryan's annoyance for some reason. They're under attack. More guns is better now. They decide to head to the PA cabin to send an SOS, but Ryan also wants Dylan to leave Chris's gun with Caitlin to protect Nick and Abby. Whether Dylan agrees with this or not, Caitlin does get the gun, as she should. I mean, yeah, they need a gun to protect themselves, and they already have one. Just makes sense. Back to Emma, she's still trying to avoid the creature and manages to climb to the top of the treehouse, where she's able to avoid it entirely by using the zip line to escape the island, but loses the taser in the process. In the nurse's office, Nick starts to act strange, becoming more aggressive with his words towards Abby, but Caitlin hears someone is in the lounge. She decides to go check it out and sees the large hunter is looking around for them. She then overhears he's talking to someone else, who informs the hunter to blood the kids, which makes no sense, but for context, that's what the hunter did to Jacob. He blooded him. Caitlin avoids the hunter but loses her gun regardless if you're successful or fail the QTEs. Heading back to the office, the counselors can avoid the pursuing hunter, but if caught, Nick demonstrates extreme strength, picking up the large hunter with one hand like he's nothing and almost choking him out. At the cabins, Dylan and Ryan are unknowingly being hunted by the creatures. Dylan and Ryan find a bear trap in the camp, a note from Chris telling the camp nurse to go home early, claw marks on the radio station, which is just incredibly weird. Inside, Ryan attempts to send an SOS, but instead the signal is intercepted by the hunters. Worse is that the creatures are around, with Caitlin, Abby, and Nick right outside trying to avoid the hunter in the lounge. The guns are useless against the creatures, but Dylan hatches a plan to use sound to scare them away, believing they're like canines. This is a success, but depending if you shot the one on the roof, Dylan may or may not lose his hand. He'll survive regardless, but he just won't have his hand. With the creatures gone, the group takes a breath but immediately sees a woman shooting at someone, finding a dead body in the pool. Jacob is still alive and is attempting to find Emma. He does, but at the same time so does another one of those things. This begins a chase with Emma falling into the water and Jacob getting caught in a bear trap and caught by the hunters. Back at the pool, we learn that the dead girl is Chris's daughter Kaylee from Ryan, but he doesn't know the person who shot her. There's no moment to rest as Nick is becoming even more aggressive, refusing to let go of Abby. Abby pushes Nick into the water and he starts crying out in pain when out of the water. His skin is extremely cold. They take refuge in the pool house to discuss what is happening and try to keep Nick warm. They decide to start collecting evidence as no one will believe them without proof, especially since there's a dead body in the pool. Abby tries to take care of Nick, who is becoming even more aggressive. His eyes are turning yellow, and then he hurls Abby across the room. Abby grabs the shotgun and shoots Nick as he cries out in pain, eventually bursting and turning into one of those creatures. If Abby happens to fail to shoot Nick, he'll kill her. Emma, swimming to shore, decides to head to the lounge. Here is where we find out Chris was telling the truth about Ryan's stories, as one of the kids wrote to their mom about how the story freaked them out. Heading back, Emma finds the hunters have captured a creature, and if you decide to run, Emma will get bitten, but escape or avoid being caught altogether and bitten if she decides to hide. Getting back to the lounge and taking refuge in a van, Emma decides to try and wait things out. Back at the pool house, everyone is freaking out about what just happened to Nick and reassures Abby she did the right thing shooting him. Just then, the woman who shot Kaylee comes to the pool house to talk to the counselors. Ryan is unsure, but Dylan recognizes her as the counselor who didn't show up. They let her in, and we see a worn Laura with a missing eye and scars all over her face. We now see what happened to Laura and Max last time we saw them. The cop took them to the police station where he interrogates Laura. He asks why they didn't go to the motel as he instructed, and she tells him they had no money for a motel. She sees on his badge his name is Hackett and is related to Chris Hackett. Hackett remains cryptic about why he's holding her. Back at the cells, Max is okay, but naked, and his cell is covered in blood and flesh, which confuses him. He has no idea what's going on. The two decide to share information about what happened, and Laura tries to pick apart what exactly was going on since they got to the camp, but it also reveals Max never looked at the map or knows anything about the Hackett name, like the Hackett Quarry, the person Chris Hackett. I have no idea why the college rejected him. I mean, Laura says he has high grades and wrote a good essay. I find that very hard to believe if he couldn't read the freaking pamphlet about the camp that he was going to work for. It's just, I'm completely confused. Anyway, Hackett brings Max some clothes and takes him away to talk. Laura explores her cell to find a limerick carved into the wall and a loose brick that can hide something. Laura threatens the cop for when they get out, and he just laughs, showing that he has no plans to release them and they have nothing to bargain with him with. Back from the interrogation, Max informs Laura that the cop just asked how he was feeling. It was completely different from when Laura was there. Laura starts to think out loud and wonders if he's related to Chris, and Max, of course, has no idea who Chris Hackett is until Laura tells him. Again, no idea how this guy was rejected from school. He's so astute and he reads everything, especially the job he's going to. Dear God. Laura tries to remain positive, and it's here that Max either reveals he didn't get into college, shocker, or Laura reveals that she knows. The two meet some common ground on the issue and move on. They discuss what happened, such as the Hackett relationship and the attack that happened. Both are concerned that Max has no injuries, considering that he was bitten and bleeding a lot, but even more weird is that Max thinks they were attacked by a werewolf. We see Laura is telling everyone what happened, and Ryan doesn't believe her. I mean, who would? But Dylan, Abby, and Caitlin do, considering everything that just happened, especially with Nick. If Dylan's hand was cut off, Laura will recite a poem stating that cutting off his hand was the right thing to do, which Dylan says, yeah. With Laura revealing that under her eye patch, she has no eye, which is likely what's there. I don't know why they didn't just show it. I mean, it's pretty obvious. Either way, Laura goes on with her story. Laura and Max spent the summer in jail discussing what happened that night. Laura wants to run, but Max believes he's really a monster, and if they go, he'll just attack them. They construct a plan to either trick the cop or use force, and the plan of course fails, as the cop just isn't having any of that, as he knows more about the situation that he's letting on. The next night, the cop handcuffs Laura by Max's cell, stating that she needs to see what's happening. Hackett leaves and Max starts to feel strange, eventually transforming into a werewolf, attacking Laura and slicing out her eyes, but breaking the cuffs in the process. Laura uses the time to clean out her wounds and search the police station, refusing to leave without Max, finding a syringe used to knock her out, and a podcast talking about the hag of Hackett's Quarry, with Hackett printing out a cease and desist letter for the host, along with the people and pets killed by the werewolf attacks, showing that the cop has been suppressing evidence of the attacks. Back at the cell, Travis Hackett starts to open up about what is happening and how it's affecting him, drinking a whole bottle of whiskey as he speaks to Laura and hands her an old piece of paper with a poem on it. Here Laura can grab Travis's gun, but it won't end well if you do. The poem reveals the weaknesses and strengths of the werewolves, such as silver, still water, cutting off limbs if you get bitten in one to avoid the infection, and so forth. And if you want more on the werewolves, I have a video explaining them linked below. And then Travis reveals that only bites can infect someone, so Laura is safe despite being sliced by Max. Travis was hoping, given Laura's scientific background, she can find a way to stop the curse, since he's been hunting the alpha white wolf for over 6 years in hopes of ridding the entire werewolf infection with nothing to show for it. But Laura hasn't even started school, so there's nothing she can do. Laura and Max decide they are done with this, and it's time for them to fix this since Travis failed to hunt the white wolf. The next night, Chris Hackett comes to the station, learning of what Travis did with Laura and Max. It is revealed during their conversation that Chris was the werewolf that bit Max, and that the people who've gone missing were indeed covered up by Travis. These things are starting to weigh on him, and he doesn't really know what to do. Laura and Max decide to hatch their plan, with Laura faking stomach pains in hopes of getting Travis in the cell and bringing his defense down. If you were prepared with the syringe, you can knock him out and get out. This is the best possible solution, as if you do anything else, it will involve his gun and Laura shooting Travis, which he will resent you for. Obviously, you just shot him, and he will kill you later regardless of your actions. When leaving, they find Travis's stash of silver bullets and decide they need to kill Chris to save Max. Back in modern time, Laura reveals after shooting who she thought was Chris, she went back to the island and found Max was still a werewolf and no one else was there, with everyone thinking Jacob and Emma are dead because there was no one present when Laura went to the island. Worse is that Laura was bitten, but it's up to you to decide whether to show it to everyone, but it's a way to build trust. Everyone except Ryan agrees with this because of his close relationship with Chris, but everyone else wants this to end as most of them are dying or could end up like Nick. We then dart to the werewolf that was captured by the hunters, who's being held in an electrified cage, and see that Jacob was also placed in the cage after being captured by the hunters. Back at the pool house, everyone learns they are hearing a woman crying, but quickly move on as they need to focus on the werewolf thing, with Laura giving Abby a shotgun shell laced with silver for protection. Back to finding Chris, only Ryan is holding back, but Caitlin decides to give a possible location of where Chris is located. Ryan eventually gives in and decides to go with Laura, hoping to save Chris and show that there may be another way, but Laura is set in her ways. They then decide that Caitlin, Abby, and Dylan should get to safety using the stolen cop car that Laura got, but Laura dumped into the lake to Ryan's confusion, which I actually agree with. I mean, there were no other cops around, and secondly, what if you need to get away quick? I don't think anyone's going to stop your cop car because the only one nearby is Travis, and yeah, it just doesn't make any sense. But they need to head to the scrapyard to find a part in order to fix the minivan to get somewhere safe, while Laura and Ryan head to the house. As they travel to the house, Ryan reveals Chris helped him with personal issues, and that's why he's so protective of him. As they get to the house, they find it's entirely closed off by a large barbed fence. Luckily, an entrance appears as the ground gives way to an underground mine. Laura leaps out of the water in pain like Nick, and her arm and eye are completely healed. Here we find out that the Hacketts owned the mine but closed it in 1930 to turn it into a park. Heading deeper, the Hag of Hackett's Quarry lure Laura and Ryan deeper into the mine, either to kill the Hackett family or to avoid more werewolves. It's up in the air right now, but we'll find out later she indeed hates the Hackett family. Finding flesh indicating someone transformed down here, they decide to keep up their guard. Ryan bonds with Laura as she takes notice that Caitlin likes him, and Ryan is aware of it, knowing that Dylan also likes him but just chooses not to do anything about it or act on it. Not sure why. I mean, freaking Brenda's song hits on you and you just don't care. I don't know. I think the guy's crazy. Deeper into the tunnels, we find out that the Hacketts were bootleggers during Prohibition with a cellar full of old whiskey and stills. Back at the lounge, Abby wants to look for Jacob and Emma, but Caitlin decides the best thing is to stick to the plan and fix the minivan. They head to the van to find Emma, who maces Dylan with air freshener. Caitlin, knowing what they need, decides to head to the scrapyard, but asks Dylan to come with her while Abby and Emma stay behind. Likely because Caitlin can't protect all of them with a single gun, but likely also because the developers only want to keep 2 characters present at all times in case they want to release the curator's cut of this game where you control the other character, hopefully not as paid DLC. In the basement of the Hackett home, Laura and Ryan find Jacob locked in a cage along with a werewolf. Travis and his mother Constance are above speaking about what's happened, with Travis breaking the news about the granddaughter Kaylee being killed, which Constance blames Travis for since he didn't kill Laura and Max and allowed his silver supplies to get stolen by Laura and Max. In the basement, Ryan can stop Laura from killing the werewolf, which with her believing it's Chris, but clearly it's not. I mean, yeah, it's clearly not Chris. I mean, you could just judge it by the clothes, and also why would they just lock him in a random electrified fence and right by some random counselor? It just doesn't make sense, but Laura is also incredibly desperate. Ryan believing that it is Nick, and he is right. Jacob begs Ryan to open the cage, but the doors aren't marked properly. Hitting anything except for breaker 1, 2, then 2 and 3 will cause Jacob to die either now or later when the power is cut. With Jacob free, Ryan tells him to use the tunnels to get back to the lounge and meet up with everyone else as Laura and Ryan head into the house but are captured by Constance and her family. We see that Caitlin and Dylan are deciding what path to take in order to get to the scrapyard, choosing to avoid the road in order to become bigger targets for the werewolves, but either way these things are incredible trackers and they'll find them unless they're wearing werewolf's blood. But they do try to make light of the situation. They laugh about whether they blew it with Ryan or that he's not even worth it. Personally speaking, I don't think he's worth it. He's one of the most bland characters in the entire game and he's just so uninteresting and he doesn't really develop that much. I mean, I personally think that when you have 2 amazing people who like you and you just decide, hey, neither of them are worth it, I think that's on you, man. On Ryan specifically. Either way, you can also make light about Dylan losing his arm, which he says maybe he'll replace it with something at the scrapyard, which I think would have been awesome if we replaced it with a chainsaw, and that would have been sick and killed a werewolf with it, but that doesn't happen. It's a good moment before reality unfortunately hits them. Back at the lounge, Abby and Emma have no idea what to do as Emma makes light of the situation and opens up to Abby, showing that she likes to make people laugh and be happy, even getting Abby to chime in. But Laura and Ryan aren't cheering as Constance fully intends to kill them for killing Kaylee. Travis tries to keep the situation under control due to her mother's bloodlust, but his father shuts him down. Bobby holds a knife to Ryan and forces Laura to act, either by distracting Constance or running away, giving Ryan time to get away, but he always gets stabbed by Bobby. Ryan, with the knife on his side, finds himself in Kaylee's room and finds a letter. It's difficult to read, but it states that Constance was overbearing, and this led to Kaylee feeling like she was being smothered. It's not clear if this was wrote before or after she got infected, but regardless, it shows that Kaylee decided to do more with her life and leave the estate. When Ryan tries to leave, Bobby is seen coming into the room. Ryan hides, and we see Laura is doing the same, avoiding the family and finding the family tree. Apparently, Chris's wife died the same year Kaylee was born, likely confirming she died in child's birth. We also find out that the family is spending over $5,000 a month in electricity for the cages beneath the house, which is why the house is in such disrepair, and also why Chris can't afford to fix the chimney. It also shows how important the business is if it is the only way they make money for the family. Thinking she lost them, Jed finds Laura and decides to make good on his wife's threat about killing Laura, Jed being Constance's husband. Jed blasts Laura with silver, but not enough to kill her. Despite his old age, Jed puts up a pretty good fight, but Laura is able to defeat him easily and can choose to kill him or simply run away. But regardless, Laura knocks out the power to escape, freeing the werewolf from the cage. Ryan attempts to evade Bobby and eventually catches up with him. Here Ryan can stab Bobby, which will result in his death or allow him to pull the knife from Ryan. Bobby knows Ryan is dying and believes he needs to put him down in order to spare him any suffering, and is scared away by Laura, knowing that she's infected and he just doesn't want to get bit. Here, Laura offers her sympathy towards Ryan about everything that happened and believes she can save him by infecting him with the werewolf curse. This is the only way to save Ryan, so we do it because this is an everyone survives ending explained, with Laura biting him. At the scrapyard, Caitlin and Ryan start searching for the part, finding that they've been hiding damages caused by the werewolves within the scrapyard, likely due to Caleb, who worked in the yard, hiding his destruction. The two find what seems to be a brand new car and may have the part they need. Unfortunately, it's magnetized by a crane 100 feet in the air. Dylan decides to learn on the job and operates the crane, but quickly sees that the werewolf has tracked them to the area. Warning Caitlin, she hides in the car and Dylan tries to raise it away from the creature, but it climbs on. Using the horn, the werewolf screams in pain as Caitlin escapes by diving onto some tires, but the angry werewolf then charges towards Dylan, who uses a blowtorch to scare it away as it heads towards Caitlin once again, where Dylan saves her by dropping a car on it. With the rotor blade in hand, they decide to leave the yard. Back at the lounge, Emma, if infected, starts to get paler and veins more visible. Emma doesn't want to just sit around and asks Abby to look for protection just in case they need it. She finds out that the hunters did disable the power to the lounge and it wasn't because of the storm. They find a ladder, and while Abby is hesitant, Emma wants to head up just in case it's an escape route that they might need. If infected, Emma does start to verbally attack Abby, similar to Nick, before starting to transform, forcing Abby to flee to Chris's office. If you happen to go down into the office with Ryan and Dylan, the ladder may break, or if you succeed in a QuickTime event, you'll be able to escape. Back at the Hackett's estate, Ryan is slowly recovering because of Laura biting him, but Laura is getting worse. They find many empty syringes and Chris, showing that his family drugged him heavily before he transformed, but now he's fully energized. The floor collapses because of all three of them standing on the weak floorboards as Chris gets free from his handcuffs and they land on top of the other family members. Bobby attempts to protect his parents from Chris as Laura tries to fight back the transformation but fails to do so, attacking Travis, smashing a silverback mirror which he arms himself with. Bobby, if not stabbed by Ryan, holds off Chris and allows his parents to escape, and Ryan kills Chris with a silver shell. This causes Laura to change back, and if you didn't shoot Travis but instead used the syringe to escape, he doesn't kill Laura or Ryan. Travis informs them that it's not over since Caleb, Chris's son, was the first to get bit. In order to save Caleb, they have to kill Silas, the first werewolf. Travis has no idea where he is, but Ryan saw it by the cabins, and Travis believes he ran Laura and Max off the road. Travis convinces Laura and Ryan as they hear roars from the other werewolves and start to look for Silas. It's here that we get a huge piece of information. The fortune teller wanted us to kill the Hackett family, and if you collected the Hierophant tarot card, we learned that the fortune teller's past. She was Silas's mother and died in the fire, cursing the area as she covered herself in what appeared to be werewolf blood before heading into the explosion. She begs the player not to let them kill Silas before we see Max has been cured. Heading down to the island, Max decides to remain on the island and wait for Laura. If he chooses to cross the lake, he'll instantly be killed by Caleb, who was waiting for him on the shoreline. Back at the lounge, Caitlin and Dylan get prepared for what's to come. They know the werewolf isn't dead and is hunting for them, with Caitlin finding out that Chris has been increasing the camp's fees for renovations, but in reality it was for hunting equipment such as silver in order to find Silas, along with a ticket stub of Kaylee and Caleb attending the fortune teller's show, which set all of this in motion, and we'll learn about that later. Exploring more, we find out that Ian, the corpse from the beginning of the game, was the camp's mascot, a sheep specifically, killed by Chris. Poor Ian. Justice for Ian, everyone. He didn't deserve to die. Or she. I mean, it could have been a female sheep, you never know. As for Dylan and Caitlin prepare for the werewolf attack, we see that Jacob got out of the Hackett's home but is breaking down, acknowledging he screwed up but just wanted one night with Emma. If Emma is alive and she actually never hid in the van but just hid in the woods, she will meet Jacob and tell him that she just doesn't want a relationship, and Jacob will tell her everything that happened. Honestly, I feel bad for Jacob. He's a hopeless romantic, and who would have known that one more night would have led to this catastrophe? It's not on him, and he definitely feels sympathy for everything he did. He's not a jerk. He just made a mistake, and I do feel bad for him. The same werewolf tracks Caitlin and Dylan to the lounge, tearing through the chimney and hunting the two throughout the lounge. Just before heading into the kitchen, Abby is heard calling out, but Dylan wants to ignore it in order to hide. Caitlin decides to go against this and check it out, and gets silver shells Abby has and was given to her by Laura, and uses them to kill Caleb, who happens to be the wolf, which is ironic considering that Travis, Ryan, and Laura are going to try and save Caleb by killing Silas, but he's already dead. This is also the only way to save Dylan. If Abby isn't present to give the silver shells, they'll head into the kitchen and both of them will die. Unless Caitlin is infected with a werewolf infection, then she could go in the freezer and her werewolf infection will actually keep her alive, or she'll die. Either way, Caleb dies, and it's unfortunate. With Travis now working with Laura and Ryan, they head to where Laura and Max had their car accident. Laura wants to know what happened, and Ryan explains there was a fire, people died, Silas escaped and infected a bunch of people, but that's not all, as we'll learn shortly after this. Silas does attack the car, but if Laura is quick enough, she grabs the wheel. If she grabs the gun and shoots, everyone will die in the car crash except for her, and she can choose to kill Silas or not, or Silas can kill her. Either way, grabbing the wheel allows Travis to wound Silas, who runs off. Heading into the forest, Travis informs they're a walking target since they have no werewolf blood to mask their scent. But as Travis leaves, Ryan reveals that he got some by shooting Bobby, who dropped the vial and attempted to drag Nick away. They can take the blood for either Laura or Ryan, but it doesn't really matter. Either option is okay. In the forest, Laura reveals she saw the fortune teller in this location. Travis says that's impossible as Eliza Vorzes died in the fire and she was the mother of Silas. That isn't all, as Travis reveals the fire was caused by his niece Kaylee and his nephew Caleb, who believed Silas was being held against his will in the freak show. They freed him, but he ended up biting Caleb and running away. Heading into the burned camp, we find Silas resting in his cage, attempting to recover from his wounds. Here, Laura decides whether to kill him, but it's the only way to end the curse, with Eliza calling out not to kill him and I can feel for her, but this is the only way. Even if it looks sad and he's a victim in all of this, him being alive is a risk for everyone in the area. He can bite as many people and cause the infection to spread further, and the only way to end this is to kill him. And that's exactly what happens, with the final message from Eliza cursing you and stating she'll haunt you forever for what you did to her son. So that's not all. It turns out that the podcast that Ryan listens to and the people Travis planned to send the cease and desist order to got the evidence of what happened. And depending on how much evidence you collected will determine how long the epilogue is, with the host Anton and Grace going through all the evidence and reacting to what decisions you made, whether everyone was killed, where the survivors are, and what evidence you collected, from the cease and desist letter to the photograph Emma took. Everything is talked about, and it's a fit-in finale for everything you experience. And that brings us to the end of this Ending Explained. Again, if you want to learn about the werewolves, I have a video about that linked below. In short, Kaylee and Caleb, the children of Chris Hackett, attempted to free a kid named Silas from a traveling circus, believing he was being held against his will by starting a fire. The fire got out of control and killed everyone in the area, and unknown to them, Silas wasn't kept against his will, but was there for the protection of others during his transformation. He bit Caleb with the werewolf infection, which caused the chain of effects which would eventually allow Caleb to bite Chris and his sister Kaylee. After this, the Hackett family spent their entire fortune funding hunts to locate Silas and end the curse, with Travis suppressing all evidence of anyone who was killed by the werewolf attacks. In addition to running a summer camp, it was the only way for them to recoup any money they needed for the hunt, leading to either the end of the curse, the death of everyone, or everyone living but the curse continuing, or some mix of these three. Either way, tell me what you thought about the Quarry. Let me know what you got in terms of endings, and thank you for watching. Remember to help me out, like, subscribe, sharing this video, all of that helps. If you want to go the extra mile, the join button is there. Members, you do an incredible job of supporting this channel. Thank you so much, and I'll see you all later. Thanks for joining me. Stay awesome.